My baby is a year old and I've learned a lot in my first year as a new mom, so I thought I would share some of the things I've learned with you. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Dr. Sam Ellis and I'm a board-certified medical and cosmetic dermatologist in Northern California. I'm here to help you understand your skin and find products that work for you, and occasionally give you a glimpse into my life as a new mom and as a physician outside of the doctor's office. So if that sounds good, give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. To be honest, I'm a little nervous to make a video about this because I feel like people can be so harsh and judgmental about parenting, and especially recognizing that people come from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic statuses, different family dynamics. And I'm just here to share what worked for me and my family and what are the things I learned given where I'm at in my life right now. My hope is that in sharing what I learned during my son's first year of life, it might help a new mom out there, or someone who's pregnant, or someone who's even thinking about starting a family, do something a little bit differently than they may have beforehand and learn from my mistakes, learn from my experience, and just hear another perspective on motherhood and parenthood in general. If you're new to the channel, I also think it helps to give a little bit of context in terms of where am I at in my life when I'm going through this. So this is my first baby. I had him when I was 32, and I'm a working mom. So I go into the office several times per week as a board-certified dermatologist, and I see patients all day long. And with that, let's get into the things I learned. I really want this video to be helpful to you. I want it to be, in my mind, the video I would have wanted to watch before I even got pregnant, so let's do it. Okay, the first thing I learned is you cannot compare your pregnancy, your birth experience, or your child's development with anyone else. When you embark on the journey of parenthood, I feel like there's so much that feels unknown. And so it's very normal to look to your peers and go, okay, what are they doing? What are they experiencing? So that you can kind of compare your life and figure out, am I on the right track? But the problem is once you start comparing your kid or your birth or anything to someone else's, it starts to detract from your personal experience. And this is absolutely easier said than done. As a physician, I know full well that people's pregnancies can really vary. They can have different types of birthing situations. Kids can develop on their own timeline. Yet I couldn't help myself when one of my friends' kid was crawling before Theo, my son was crawling. I thought, am I messing up? Is Theo behind? And so it's really easy to go to that place as a parent. And I think it's just because you care so much. You probably care about this more than you've ever cared about anything in your entire life. So it's really easy to feel like you're messing it up. But with time, and definitely with some reminders and some practice, it does get easier to not compare yourself to others or compare your child to another child. And that will really let you find more joy and more peace with parenting, because you can live in the moment with what your child's doing, not what they should be doing next. And it's really easy in parenting to be like, okay, my child should do this, then this, then this, and I'm just going to get through the days and the weeks and the months. But as any parent will tell you, time flies. And the more that you can sit with your kid where they're at and meet them in the moment, the more you're going to enjoy parenthood. And the last thing I'll say about this topic, and I think we all know this deep down in our hearts, but you absolutely cannot compare your experience as a parent, as a mom, etc., to what you see on social media, on a curated Instagram page, or on an edited YouTube video. Most people are not sharing their darkest, hardest moments publicly. Everyone has them, but not everyone puts that out there for the world to see. And that's totally fine. I completely respect that. But just know, if you are watching someone else's life through social media and you feel like everything is perfect, it's not, and your life doesn't have to be either. All right, another thing I learned is if you are raising your child with a partner, get your partner super involved from the beginning. So by involving your partner from the very beginning, they can kind of learn the skills as they come. So it's not overwhelming. It's not like, oh, I'm going away one weekend when the child's 3 years old and now suddenly my partner has to learn how to cook and bathe and do all these things for my kid. But they've slowly been learning those skills over time as the other parent has, so that they can always be helpful and be there to support you. Which is a nice segue into the next thing I learned during my child's first year of life, which is it really does take a village to raise a child. Parenthood is relentless. There are no breaks. You can't just decide like, I'm not gonna do this right now, or I'm quitting. And so the more people you have around you to support you through that journey of parenthood, the more time that you're able to take for yourself to reset mentally and physically so that when you are spending time with your kid, you can really be present. And I know having people around you to support you when you have a kid or multiple kids is a total luxury. But if you can get to a point in your life where that is possible, either to have enough financial resources to hire someone to help you or to live in your family or with family, I do think that is tremendously helpful. When I had my son, my mom offered to come and stay with me for a few weeks to help me out. And initially I was like, is that weird? Like, I have a baby. I don't need to be my mom's baby, but I cannot tell you how helpful it was to have her there. So if you have someone in your life that wants to support you, that wants to come help you, especially when you first give birth, accept all the help. We also live 5 minutes from my in-laws, and luckily I absolutely adore my in-laws. And although we don't have any expectation for them to come over or watch Theo for X number of hours per week, they do spend time with him. And when they're spending time with him, I can participate in that, or I can have a little bit of time to do things for myself. Speaking of it taking a village, I also wanted to talk about what I learned when trying to find and hire a nanny. I went back to work 2 months after Theo was born, and yes, that is not the ideal situation, but it's my reality. And then we waited for my husband to take his paternity leave until after I went back to work. So I did my 2 months of maternity leave, and then he actually got 16 or maybe even 18 weeks of paternity leave. So we didn't need a nanny until about 6 months after Theo was born. And at 6 months, Theo also could have gone to daycare, although in our area, there are not that many daycares that take children that young, and usually you have to sign those kids up for daycare when they're still in the womb or even before you've ever conceived that child, and we just weren't that on top of it. So what I'll say is when it comes to childcare, especially if you want to send your kid to daycare, I would start looking into it essentially as soon as you become pregnant. I'd say if you're going the nanny route, checking it out about 3 months ahead of time is a pretty good idea. If you start the nanny search too early, a lot of nannies aren't posting their future availability yet. Or if you secure a nanny too early, I've had a lot of friends where the nanny then fell through for whatever reason. So I feel like hiring your nanny about 1 to 2 months before their desired start date is pretty ideal. And there are lots of ways to find nannies. You can go through an agency where you pay a premium for a company to find and vet your nanny. That's probably the easiest way to go. We went through something called Berkeley Parents Network. It's a website very similar to Nextdoor for our community where all sorts of events are posted, but there's also message boards specifically for nannies who are looking for work. I also think a huge part of the mental roller coaster for me was that I love my job. I spend a lot of time participating in my job, and now I have a child, which is another full-time job, more than a full-time job. And I found that I didn't have enough mental resources to give 100% to both, at least the way I was approaching it initially. With work, I was always a say yes to everything type of person. A patient wants to be added on at the end of my day, fine. Patient missed their appointment, can they come in later or can you squeeze them in tomorrow? Fine. Someone wants to do an interview with you after work, can they come in? Fine. But I realized that in doing that, it was sacrificing time with Theo and also just depleting me mentally in a way that when I got home to Theo, I couldn't give everything to him. And I really began to resent work in a way that I never had before. And I didn't like that feeling because I truly, truly love my job. So in the end, I did have to make some compromises, but ultimately it has made me so much happier. So I end my clinic day about half an hour earlier so that I can have a little bit of time to really be there at the end of the day with Theo after he's been with his nanny before he goes to bed. And yes, that means that I'm booking my patient schedules out a little bit further and I can't always squeeze people in the same way I always did. But I also have found that my patients are incredibly supportive. I take care of a lot of parents, and so many people have told me, listen, we'll be here for you. You need to be there for your kid because you only get to be a parent once. This time is so valuable and so fleeting, and we want to support you through that. And I have just been forever grateful to my patients for that. It's making me tear up talking about it. Okay, so that's really all to say that as a parent, you might have to set new boundaries that make you a little bit uncomfortable, but because parenthood is such a roller coaster mentally, I really feel like it's important to feel empowered to set those boundaries so that you can enjoy the ride. And on the topic of mental roller coaster, another thing I learned in the past year is that sleep deprivation consistently over a long period of time is the absolute hardest mental and physical thing that I have ever endured and am still enduring. I mean, truly, my entire pregnancy and giving birth were an absolute breeze in comparison to the continuous sleep deprivation that I had for the first 5 months of Theo's life. And it's still not amazing, and I'll get to that in a second, but it's come a long way, but oh my gosh, not sleeping it ruined me. I honestly thought I would be fine because I was like, I've gone to med school, I did intern year, I've done 24-hour shifts, I've done call overnight many, many times, but the difference is you don't get any breaks once you are a parent. When you are in medicine and you do a 24-hour shift, you then get another 24 hours or more off to recover a little bit. There is no recovery in parenthood. The first 2 weeks after Theo was born, I was kind of fine. Yes, I was waking up like every 2 to 3 hours overnight, but I feel like I had built up the prior 32 years of basically getting enough sleep that I was doing okay. And I kind of felt like I was manic the first 2 weeks. If you followed me on Instagram, you saw I baked like 20 loaves of banana bread. But after about 2 weeks, the sleep deprivation started to catch up with me and started to catch up with my husband. And then I just became like a very mean person. What I will say is if you are currently going through the sleep deprivation stage of raising your child, it does get better. It definitely does get better. Even now, he still wakes up at like 5 a.m. every day, but compared to waking up like every 2 to 3 hours overnight, huge improvement. Before Theo was 5 months, he never slept more than like 4 or 5 consecutive hours overnight. And that was super challenging. And I was so jealous of my friends who were like, oh, my kid was 6 weeks old and then they just slept 12 hours straight. And I was like, cool. Mine doesn't do that. And so when he turned 5 months, we decided to do sleep training. Best decision ever. We used the sleep training book called The Sleep Easy Solution, and it worked incredibly well. Theo was sleep trained and basically sleeping through the night for the first time within like 6 days, I want to say, of us starting sleep training. And I know there's a little bit of controversy about sleep training. And for sure, while I was going through the process, I was like, I'm a horrible mom, I'm a horrible mom, I'm a horrible mom. But repeated studies on children show that it decreases parent depression to sleep train your child. Your child gets better sleep when you sleep train them, and there is no evidence that it affects your child's development in any type of negative way. So if you're thinking about sleep training, do it. All right, let's move on to some other like practical tips based on things I've learned. My number one thing is if you are going to have a baby shower or use a baby registry, use Amazon. If you are anti-Amazon, fine, don't use Amazon. But I do recommend if you're using a baby registry, make sure it's easy to do returns. We used Babylist and it was so hard to do returns. And the reality is when you're making a baby registry, especially for your first time, you don't know what the heck you actually are going to need. And you're going to find that you got a lot of gifts that you really don't have a use for and you'll want to return them so you can buy something that you actually need to use. And it was basically impossible for us to do returns. Also, if you are looking for some good things to put on your baby registry, I have a whole YouTube video about my newborn essentials, and those are sort of like tried and true vetted things that I continue to use off of my registry. Another thing I also learned, which sort of relates to the postpartum period, is there are some very specific types of clothing that I think are very helpful to have on hand. The first thing is black sweatpants. In that first month postpartum, whether you had a vaginal birth or a cesarean delivery, you're doing a lot of recovery. Things get a little bit messy. If you can wear black, that's great. And you also want your sweatpants to have some pockets because if you're carrying baby around, it's nice to be able to bring around your baby monitor or your phone, and you just don't have enough hands for all the things you need to do postpartum. So anything with pockets is going to be better. Another thing I found really helpful postpartum in terms of wardrobe was having a big cozy robe. I think I initially got this idea off of another influencer's blog and I was like, am I really gonna like wear a robe? But I wore my robe so much, I felt like Hugh Hefner walking around my house for like the first 6 weeks postpartum. In the beginning, you're getting up so many times in the middle of the night, so it's really nice to just have like a cozy robe to throw on. Also, if you're breastfeeding, it makes it very easy to access your boobs. So that's another thing just from a practicality standpoint. And also if you have like people randomly stopping over, which for whatever reason that happened a lot to us postpartum, you always have like a little robe that you can throw on and make yourself decent. If you don't want to use a robe, then I think a good alternative to this is just like having a couple zip up hoodies. Because again, especially if you're breastfeeding, it's just so easy if you don't have to like lift up your sweatshirt and maneuver everything. And over time you get better at that. But I feel like in the first like 6 to 8 weeks, breastfeeding can be particularly challenging. So if you can just kind of like unzip or open your front and have access to what you need to have access to, it just makes the whole process a lot more smooth. And then the last wardrobe essential that I recommend investing in is a good pair of slippers. When Theo was like 8 months old, I slipped down our stairs while I was carrying him, and it was one, incredibly painful, but two, like one of the scariest moments of my life. And if I had been wearing slippers, that all could have been avoided. So if you need any excuse to invest in a good pair of slippers, that's it. All right, I just have a couple more things that I wanted to go over in terms of what I learned. If you are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Again, this is just speaking from a practicality standpoint. I'm going to teach you how to optimize diaper changes because I learned all these little things along the way and it would have been nice to know them all from the beginning. You are going to change so many diapers, so you might as well get it right. First of all, I think when you look at pictures of nurseries, when you're putting a nursery together, you oftentimes will see a mobile above the crib, which definitely can be a good thing, but I recommend putting the mobile above the changing station, kind of above where your baby's head will be, because they get to a point where they don't want to be lying on their backs and they need a good distraction, and having a mobile to just look up at is awesome. On that same note, it can be nice to have a couple small toys at the changing table that you can hand your child while you change them. I don't know about other people's kids, but my son knows where his genitalia are and definitely tries to reach for them during diaper changes, which is like not the most ideal situation, especially if you have a poopy diaper going on. So having something there to distract their hands can be really helpful. I also love the little diaper changing mat that we got off of our baby registry. It's called the Kikaru Peanut Changer, and it is just super sturdy, really comfy for the baby to lie in. And it's also very easy to wipe clean, which makes cleanup after diaper changes super, super easy. And it has just been like such an amazing thing. We use it more than maybe anything else on our registry. And then a tip for not getting peed on or getting peed on less frequently is when you're going to take your baby's diaper off to change them. If you put a little wet wipe and you rub it over their tummy and then you blow on their tummy, it can trigger them to urinate. And if you do that before you open their diaper to change them, oftentimes that sort of depletes their stash and makes it less likely that they're going to pee on you. And then the final thing I've learned in this first year of Theo's life is how beautiful and how hard parenting can be. I had to end on something cheesy, okay? The empathy that I have for single parents, for parents whose child is going through some type of mental or physical struggle, for families that are under financial stress or other types of stress, I have so much more compassion because I fully understand it. And I know that's so silly to have a child of your own to really get it, but in my case, I did. I really had to have a baby to fully appreciate what other people go through in raising their family. I think this type of awareness has made me a better person overall, but especially a better physician. I used to get so annoyed when someone would no-show their appointment or they were late to their appointment. And now I see it's a parent and I don't know what their struggle may be. And I feel like I just have developed a lot more compassion. Also, I don't know if anyone else experienced this when they had a child, but before I had a baby, when I would interact with other kids, I'm like, okay, great, it's a kid, but I never felt a real connection with other kids. And since having a baby, I'm like obsessed with other babies, other kids, even my teenager patients. I just feel so much more connected to them. I feel like I understand them a lot better. So that was a very surprising kind of shift that happened to me postpartum. As Theo continues to grow up, I'm sure I will continue to learn new things and my perspective on life will continue to shift. But when I reflect back on this past year, it has been a beautiful, messy, enlightening, fun experience. And I'm just so excited to see what the future holds. What are some things you learned as a new mom? Share in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.